Joining me now on the London Theatre Review, Tracy-Ann Oberman. For those who haven't encountered it yet, your show, The Merchant of Venice 1936, is returning to London for the third time, is this now?
This is when it's coming back 6 months after it finished in the West End. So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it's the third run. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're coming into the Trafalgar Theatre this time, having played the Criterion last time.
Yes.
Those who don't know about the show, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, it's I've taken The Merchant of Venice, the original Shakespeare, and myself and Bridget Larmore have adapted it so it's much shorter and punchier. And I've turned Shylock into a female Shylock based on my great grandmother, an immigrant living in the East End of London. And we've turned the Venetian aristocracy into Oswald Mosley's upper class English fascist followers and it's set in 1936, just a few days before the Battle of Cable Street, where Oswald Mosley marched on the Jewish entity in the East End of London. And it's a mashup, basically, of a sort of forgotten part of British history, a civil rights moment that I was brought up knowing about.
Yeah.
From my great grandmother, about how Mosley fully expected to march on the East End with a whole load of other supporters. He marched down with his militia of British Union of Fascists, and my great grandmother always told me that the all the neighbours joined them: the Irish working class, the English working class, the Afro-Caribbean community, the Somali sailors, the dockers, and they all stood together and they said, "You shall not pass." And Mosley and the fascists didn't pass, and then the law was changed after that. So that you couldn't have your own private militia. So I've taken this very potent political moment in history, particularly for the Jewish community in the East End, and I've taken my own personal family story to make a
Yeah.
female Shylock. And we've put it together and it's turned into a really strong, punchy bit of theatre.
Right. Yes. So you said your grandmother was there at Cable Street and other members of your family, I believe,
My
as well,
great
weren't they?
grandmother and my grandmother and my uncle Alf and my uncle Leslie, they had, they'd been told just before Mosley got married to Diana Mitford at Goebbels's house with
Yeah.
Hitler as a witness. And as a sort of wedding present, Hitler gave him the playbook of how to whip up horrible anti-Semitism within other working class communities in order to get your own private army. So whilst Hitler had his brown shirts, Mosley had his black shirts, and at one point there were 500,000 strong. And in the 1930s, leading up to the Battle of this march on Cable Street, Mosley was speaking across the country about the evil Jewish entity and how it was ruining the country and how Jews were so untrustworthy, and they were just in it for themselves, and they were the fifth columnists and all sorts of stuff. And my great grandmother, who always, had come from the pogroms of Belarus, always called England the Golden Medina. You may be living in a slum tenement, but nobody wanted to cut your head off or rape you or murder you. So she loved England, but on the day of this march, the Jewish Chronicle and the Jewish organizations told Jews to stay in and to keep out of the way because they didn't want to whip up the authorities who were protecting Mosley to hate them more. So she very much stayed at home and tried to get the kids to stay at home. But my uncle Alf went right out there on the front line with the fascists, with the anti-fascists, to fight the black shirts and the fully mounted police that were protected them. And he got thrown through a plate glass window at Gardener's Corner, and
Right.
he came back up to the flat, covered in blood. And apparently my great grandmother just sort of mumbled something in Yiddish and grabbed my grabbed Uncle Alf, took them out onto the front line to stand at the corner of the entrance to Cable Street, where Mosley wanted to march through from all these five corners, march through Cable Street, and then do a rally in the park. And my great grandmother and the Irish neighbours and all the other neighbours, they joined them, and they all linked arms, and they overturned the milk floats, and they threw marbles, and they pushed them back. So it was
Right.
really amazing moment, and it really chills me to the bone that, having lost family in the Holocaust and in Eastern Europe, that my great grandmother came face to face with a man who had got married with Hitler and Goebbels as his witnesses.
Extraordinary.
Chilling.
Yes. I think you've said before that you were no great fan of the play before deciding to adapt it.
I'm a much better fan of the play now. I think
Right.
it's a really problematic play. I think it's a difficult play, but I think that the most difficult thing with The Merchant of Venice is it's taught incredibly badly at schools. I don't think it's really taught through the prism of racism, anti-Jewish hatred, and quite what a hypocritical, awful bunch of people every single one of them is. You know, it's often the lovely, kindly Christian merchant Antonio and the heroine Portia, who, like the Virgin Mary, comes in and saves them all. And, you know, they're all ghastly, awful people. But what I've come to, now I know the play so very well, having, you know, worked on the adaptation and working on this production, it's a beautifully written play. It's some of his great language. The language is stunning. The poetry is stunning. The character of Shylock is deep and is a very funny character and a very witty character. But because Shakespeare was writing for a deeply anti-Semitic audience, even though there were no Jews left in England at the time he was writing it, because they'd all been kicked out 200 years earlier, he still had an audience that wanted the Jew to be punished and destroyed at the end, which is exactly what he gives them. So for me, why I'm so pleased that it's become this hit, I guess it, you know, it has become a hit. It's sold out everywhere. It's been bought back now 3 times, and each time we get to do it in a different iteration. We've done a very good online world and explanation about the play, so school teachers and schools can use it, and basically anybody who comes, when you buy a ticket, you get an online world explaining to you about the world of the play, the language of the Shakespeare, but also the setting of 1936 and the rise of the fascist movement in Britain.
Right. Yes, I see. How does it affect the play, changing it to a female Shylock?
I think it changes everything, and I think it unlocks something within it. When it's a traditional male, it's about a very obsessive father with this one daughter, Jessica. And when you've got a mother who is a tough, strong matriarch, and anybody who comes from a kind of immigrant or working class background, I think, knows what it's like with those strong women. These tough, strong matriarchs that keep the family together. And so my Shylock is a survivor. The very things that kept her alive in Belarus, that kept her alive coming into this country, that's made her be able to cut deals and become a moneylender under the table, you know, of her pawn shop in, selling things. She lends money. She's like a bottom feeder of the sort of money lending. But this tough, strong woman has this daughter, Jessica, who she lives for. Everything is about giving this one daughter of hers the life that she never had a chance to have, to be educated and to be one of them out there, but not to stray too far from it. And whilst my female Shylock is not necessarily likable, I think you understand her and that love for a daughter and that obsessive love for a daughter, and then the betrayal of your only daughter and what that daughter does to her. I think it seems to really touch people, and also the incredible intersectionality between misogyny and racism. Something you've got the tropes of the angry Black woman and the angry Jewish woman and the angry Muslim woman, and the tough, strong working class woman. These are the women that won't shut up and won't go away. And particularly in the 1930s, people wanted their females to preferably look like Diana Mitford, to be totally apolitical, to shut up and look pretty in a corner and not involve themselves in big male grown-up things. And, my bubba was very political. My grandmother was very political. They were down in the East End. They were part of forming the labor movement. They were part of the trade union movement. These were tough, strong women. And so by having Shylock as a woman, the racism of Antonio, and when she says, you spit on my hair and you pushed me into the street and you kicked me as if I was a dog across your threshold, these things have a resonance. And then when she's in the court and you've got this sort of middle-aged woman with her handbag and her contract with this idiot Antonio, who is prepared to sign off a pound of flesh for the unrequited love of Bassanio, when she comes to court with this contract saying, I'm in England, this is the rule of law and contract is everything. And then you see how this very male courtroom and how church and state and establishment are used against her. I think it's very moving.